This is part D. I'd like for you to download the class EX4 that I have on file for you in eCampus with it. If you go eCampus class exercises, under class exercise number 4 folder, I have the zip file plus the instruction that comes with it. Just download it and store it down and extract it down to your local drive, wherever you store your files in there with it. In this particular exercise, here's what I want you to do. So for some of you, this is a review with it. But if you had me for a Web 1, you probably have done something like this, is that you wrote some CSS. There's 3 types of CSS files, right? Cascade style sheets. There's external, there's embedded, and there's inline, right? Or what's called internal is embedded, and this is what you're going to hear both of them with it. And so it's depending where you have these files with it. And of course, there's order of precedence with it. The inline CSS overrides the internal, and the internal overrides the external with it, right? So it goes, of course, the highest one is the inline, which is the closest to the object, meaning closest to the data. That's the one that's going to be override. So what I'd like for you to do here, this is not about CSS class with it, but I'm going to give you a file with it, and let me minimize this, just move this out of the way here. So I downloaded this and extract this, and this is what it looks like with it, and I ran the files. I just want to show you what this current file has right now with it, and I want you to put your name on here, make sure your name goes here, and tell me the year and the semester you're in, fall, summer, spring. That's what you put here, and the year goes here with it, the semester with it. But here's the thing about this, is that you have all of this right now. Just to look at some of the files here with it. Excuse me. Let me word wrap this. So in the files that word wrap. Darn it. Because I didn't have it large enough here. Let's see here. I want to see all the files with it as well. So in the nav menu.html file that you extracted on this thing with it, this is what I've given you with it. So all this is between the head tags with it, and this is the closing of the head tags. If you look at this, the embedded, or I'm going to use the word embedded and internal, depending on what textbooks you use with it. There's synonyms with it. I don't care. The CSS is between the head tags. Okay. So all this is, imagine your file. Every time when you load a page, all this needs to be loaded. All right. So it's very bulky and it's a lot of information to be loaded in between the head tag, and bandwidth is an issue with it. So when you're reading, a lot of times you could slow down your page with it. That's one thing, right? The second thing is that I want you to look at this. There's a Cdn file that I have here, and we're going to talk about what this looks like with it. So the Cdn file is this little pull down menu. When I hover over it, this is JavaScript, right? So if I hover each one of these things, it actually is CSS, and it changes whatever it is with it. But when I do this, it drops down like 1, 2, and 3 with it. So this is a responsive design. What does that mean? Well, if I looked at this in different, I closed it, no. Oh, okay, don't worry about it. Let's open this up again with it. So this is what it looks like. So responsive design means that if I took this to a tablet, or I took it to an iPhone or Android phone, based on the device I have, it responds to it. So the menu becomes this hamburger. I call it the hamburger. There's 3 lines with it, and there's a drop down with it as well. So it is responsive based on what you're looking at with it as well. So, but here's the thing: it's not about the code. I don't care about you knowing the code for this thing. You should have had all this stuff back in Web 1 with it. This is a review. This is about components. This exercise with it. So what I'd like for you to do is, when you're done with this, you should have the same result with this. Okay, same output as this with it. That's a key thing. All right. So when you're done with this thing, let me bump this over. Come on. And then I'm going to look at the code right here. So when you're done with this, what I'd like for you to do is, if you look at this file structure with it, I'd like for you to create two subdirectories underneath this right now. Just right mouse click on it, new folder. The first one I want you to call it CSS. We're going to separate the CSS section. The second one I want you to separate is the JavaScript. So JS, all lowercase, CSS, JS with it. So be careful on your new on the web server with it. In Linux box, it is case sensitive. If you're hosting this on a Linux Apache, it is case sensitive. So file name and file directories are case sensitive, so that when you give links to it. So the first thing I need for you to do is, if you take a look at this part right here, the style, I'd like for you to look at the style for me, and we're going to actually remove the style. Highlight this right here to select all of this all the way down to the closing of your style, which is, for me, in this code, is line 119. So if you take a look at one from 119 to, as you can see, up to line 12, 12 to line 119, 12 to line 119 with it. I'd like for you to right mouse click, just cut, okay? So we're going to remove that. Come over to your CSS folder, click on, hover over new, this icon over here has a little plus, okay? You click on it. I want you to call this thing menu.css. And all you have to do once you have that open, here's the menu.css with it, Control V, paste that in there. That's it. You don't have to read or understand any of this stuff with it. I don't care if you want to look at this or not with it. But there are classes in here, there are definitions in here, and all that stuff that belongs in here. We'll just leave it with that with it. So that's one thing. But we need to find a way to link it to these files. So hold on a second, okay? So the second thing I need for you to is expand, go back to your menu, navigation menu.html, nav menu.html, and scroll down. This is the little JavaScript that you have right here, this little function right here with it, right? So here's what I need for you to do. When you look at this, we need to take this particular part right here, and I want you to take the function, my function, which is line 41 to 47, line 41 to line 47. Right mouse click on it, cut, and we're going to come into the JS folder, click on the JS folder, right mouse click on it, new file. Call this thing menu.js, okay? And then we're going to paste, Control V, paste that in there with it. So making sure everything's aligned properly with it, so that this right curly bracket matches with this left curly brackets, and this this left matches with it. So you haven't done anything basically with it, right? So that's all you're doing with it. So are you using screen reader to operate the VS Code? Word wrap is disabled when you're using, okay, yeah, whatever. All right, so so you have both of these, but we have to link these with it as well. Let's go back to your HTML file, nav right here with it. So I'd like for you to come up here. We're going to still keep all this body of between the div tag is still there, right? All the div tag is still there with it. But we need to add in a link to our CSS and to our JavaScript with it. Let's take a look at our CSS first. All right. Remember how you link an external CSS? It starts with, this is in between your head tag. This is in between your head tag, and I'm putting this in line 12 with it. So link rel for the relative with it, and give this as what? Style sheets. Remember this? Close that off. The second attribute's type what? Is going to be the text / CSS, right? Come to the right of that quote, and this is where you have to get it right. href with it. Now, the question is, what is the relationship, the path relationship from the nav menu.html to your menu.css? I have to go where? It's at the same level as my CSS folder, right? So what I need to go inside my CSS folder and then my menu.css. You see how that works with it? So I love the visual code that you can actually do a /. It pulls down that menu for you. Look at that. So I have to just click on it and click on it again. It writes the code for me. Isn't that a nice thing with it? That's a beauty thing about it. And I need to close this link off with a right angle bracket with it. All right. So that's how I link this file to the CSS, to the menu CSS. Let's come down here to your script for me for a moment. In your script tag, your script tag, we need to link that part in here as well. Oops, I left a bracket here. Look at that. I left a curly parentheses here. This is dangerous here. So I need to go back to my JS, my menu JS here. I want to make sure I got everything right here. Hang on. I think I left out an extra one a few minutes ago with it. Yeah, right here. My bad. So make sure you copy everything with it. Don't do what I did with it. I left a right curly brackets, and I missed. So if I want to check, make sure you picked up this right curly bracket here, and this goes with this left. This right. This left goes with this right. This left goes with this right. Okay, so they are paired and they're nested in here as well. So make sure I left out one of them, so I had to go back in and bring that over from my nav menu.html. So make sure that if you don't have that bracket there, it's not going to work with it. Okay, so let me stop here. This is the mistake that I made. So I want you guys to take a look at your menu.js for a second. It looks like that with it. So let's cut back and back to this right here. We need to go into, let me bring all this up in the script tag with it. So we can tighten this code up a little bit more, make it a little cleaner. And inside the opening of the script tag, I need to give it a source where it's coming from with it, and just click on that. And we need to give it a path. So what is the relationship from the nav menu.html to your menu.js? I have to go through what? The JS folder, right? Guess what? Just hit down your / and it opens up your subdirectory JS right there. Click on it and select the file. That's it. That's simple with it. I love IDEs for that reason with it. So most of the IDEs out there, when you start to programming code, take advantage of all of this with it. It just helps you to prevent a lot of syntax errors. That's what you're looking at it with it, right? So if I did this right, this content right here would be the same. Right? This is the original one. But all three of these files have been modified and changed. So I need to come over here and do File, Save All. That will save it across on all three files with it, right? And I'm running this right now. Look, it's still running. It looks like this with it. If you want to see what it looks like, there's another way. You can come down here. You see at the bottom right here where my cursor is hovering, port : 550. You click on it. All right, go live. And it's live right now. It's connecting right now with it. So this is why I like for you to take the screenshot of. Take the whole screenshot of this. I like to see the expand. You need to expand your CSS folder. You need to expand your JS folder, showing the three files that you have separated out. Separate the two files, structure with it. So the menu.css and the menu.js and the nav menu.html. So this is a review. From Web 1, but I want you to be able to see the linking of the different components with it. So if you haven't done this in Web 1, which you should have known this, and a little bit about JavaScript and a little bit about CSS with it, everything can be put on one page, or everything can be separate as separate pages and components with it. The key thing is I want you to understand the word component. Component is a certain, remember that Lego analogy of Statue of David with it? So different parts can be built separately and then brought into the actual final page with it. Let me give you another analogy with it. Several years ago, I had an opportunity to visit a manufacturing company in Garland. They were doing international trucks. You know, in 8 hours, from 8 in the morning to about 5 o'clock, they assemble an entire line of trucks up there with it. And one of the things I noticed is that, they didn't do the alternator on the same line. They didn't do the carburetor on the same line. All these parts were built in at another location, and they were brought to the engine. They were brought to assemble. They were brought to, everything was lined up to be assembled that day with it, to be a complete car. So my point in saying is that when you make declarative programming, which you are going to this direction with it, a lot of this will be inside of what you're going to display here with it. All right, we're going to do less of the coding. That looking at a code like this is maintenance of the code is a lot easier and lighter than versus the first file that I gave you. Okay. So think of it as I want you to think of it. Start thinking declarative programming. Smaller parts making up bigger parts with it, right? So you could be hired on industry just to be in charge of the search engine. You can be hired out in industry just to be in charge of bringing in other social media parts of that website. You can be in charge of a certain component of a web page. Outside of that component, there's another team that does it. Outside of that other component, you could have other shopping carts to deal with. So your skill sets, you need to understand the grand big picture before you get down to the detail with this. So I'm giving you this as an analogy for you to see how this is broken up in multiple parts with it. But at the same time, you have to see the big picture when you all fit all this together as the puzzle. Okay, it's 15 minutes and almost 16 minutes. I'm going to stop here. So this concludes the part about components with it.